Welcome back on the broadcast, and the gentlemen are here joining me. I guess I'll be the lady of the day, as always I've been in many scenarios, right?
Oh, yes.
So indeed, of course, we have the panel that is set to discuss the events of 2019. Yesterday, we had a moment of just understanding the political arena and what played out in 2019. Of course, politics will never cease to be. And in as much as we'd want to run away from that talk, the newspapers compel us to discuss the politics of the day briefly as we cross over to trends of 2019 in regards to the tragedies that we witnessed as a country, in regards to the cost of living, and moving forward, what we're supposed to do to balance the economy at least, or bring it to that level of equilibrium, and also on the trends of violence within the family setup. Pretty much unfortunate. I know the panel is looking at me like, oh, we're not fond of discussing that, but all the same, I think there are issues that affect us, gentlemen, and there's no way we can run away from them. We cannot be eating politics, drinking politics, talking politics every other time, and we sort of fail to address all these other issues that, you know, are equally directed or are equally run by how we play our politics, the social issues. So yes, it's on the year in review. Welcome on board once again. And of course, Michael Leo, seated right next to me. He's a public policy analyst. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Adede Paul Adede, a political analyst. Thank you so much for your time, sorry. And Dr. Justice Juma. Why did I say Justice? Because of the Justice and Freedom Party. Yes, he's the Justice and Freedom Party leader. Welcome on board, Daktari.
And he's a just man also.
He's a just man, you think so?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Doc, are you?
Thank you, beautiful.
Yeah, that clearly tells us that you're a just man. Yes, thank you so much. So yes, and before we delve into all that, which of course is stories that we've equally gone to, you know, just going back down into the files and to the archives. And, you know, just reminding ourselves as a people where we're coming from, especially in regards to how we've spent the year. But first, before we delve into that, let's first take a look at the politics of the day. And I think it's only fair that as political analysts, I allow you guys to weigh in your sentiments, especially in regards to what is on the Daily Nation. That is the front page of this Daily Nation. It's a story that we had yesterday. And the great divide on whether President Uhuru Kenyatta should still sit on board and, of course, take up the Prime Minister's seat. That is a clear indication that probably we're headed for a referendum, and then we're going to have a change in the system of governance. While we know very well that there are people who are capable of taking up the leadership, you know, sort of mantle. Dr. Justice Juma himself, a party leader. Yes, a party leader, and equally, you know, someone who's contended for this seat before. Then a clear indication that we have able Kenyans. Then why should we always sort of have the very same ones coming back? And we're not trying to say it's a bad thing. For as long as someone qualifies, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But do you suppose that we should go with what Martha Karua says, that, you know, President Uhuru Kenyatta should exit the stage as per the Constitution in the event that this term ends, or we should go by what Atwoli says, that he's pretty young to exit the stage?
Thank you, Linda. One, I'm happy to be here on the last day of 2019.
Oh, yes, and we're crossing fingers that we'll be there next week.
God is great. We'll be there.
Yeah.
Let me just start with the issue of age. I don't think we should even contemplate that President Kenyatta should continue being in office because he's a young man. President Obama left office.
Probably younger than President Uhuru Kenyatta himself.
Definitely younger than President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Yeah.
Thinking better.
Oh, really? Yeah?
And he never claimed that he was too young to go anywhere. Neither did he claim that he had nothing better to do in his life. So people should not use age to camouflage their political ambitions, particularly in Kenya or anywhere else. If the Constitution says you serve for 2 terms and go home, kindly go home and do other things. In any case, President Kenyatta comes from a rich background, and I think they've also become richer with time. Since 2013, he can get himself a lot of work to do on the sides.
Right.
Now, 2, now let me talk about the great divide, or whether or not we will have a referendum. Should we have that referendum and end up with an executive prime minister? That means the prime minister must first of all be an MP for him to sit in parliament.
Yeah.
Because you cannot lead a party if you are not sitting in that parliament. If that were the case, then we are heading for very interesting times. One, there'll be very many casualties. That means the current MP for Gatundu South
Okay, what does
who
he
is
have
my
to say?
friend. We will
Dismissed Murade's claim, saying he was speaking on behalf of dark forces. He would never,
You see?
agree to that.
You see, the current MP for, is it, nowadays we don't have Eldoret North, we have Turbo. That guy is also on the chopping board. The current MP for Sabatia, his head is also on the chopping board. So there are going to be very
Why
many
are you
casualties.
overlooking anything to do with Nyanza?
We don't know whether he is still interested in Langata or Bondo.
Don't we? Okay,
Because
well, of course.
all along he has always been in Langata. So I don't know. But you know, the ODM Supremo is here. He'll tell us.
He will tell us, yes.
He'll tell us that. So there are going to be very many casualties.
Right.
And then that also means something else. Should the executive PM position come, who will be the president and who will be the prime minister? And what exactly did Raila and Uhuru discuss the day of their handshake? Is it something worth knowing now? Is this what they discussed? Because, come to think of it, this BBI matter
Is it a matter of...
was a ceasefire initiative.
Right.
A ceasefire initiative between President Kenyatta and Honorable Raila, the people's president and the president of Kenya. So they sat down and did a ceasefire initiative. Nobody calls you to negotiate a ceasefire unless you threaten the status quo.
Yeah.
I have never seen a monk being called to the table to negotiate a ceasefire. They are never invited. You are only invited when you threaten the status quo. And when a ceasefire is negotiated, there are many other things that are discussed which are never made public. We don't know what they discussed. They came out of Harambee House and told us that they had agreed to unite, to bring peace, to form a task force and a committee. And to date, that is all they've always said. We are still very curious to find out exactly what they said.
All right. Amid the curiosity, would we then be forgiven to, in such, you know, when you look at such utterances coming from Murathe, a man who's been considered to be always speaking on behalf of course, the key figures, President Uhuru Kenyatta to be specific, in what also played out at that particular time when he was the vice chair of Jubilee Party. And when he comes out to claim this, would we be forgiven then to say that indeed the BBI, as many would have claimed, was of course a vehicle towards ensuring that some people's interests are catered for in such a case?
You know, Linda, first of all, thank you for hosting me.
And equally, don't forget to tell us where Baba is headed to. Yeah.
The most important thing that we need to discuss is, you know, the politics of this nation has been us versus them. And I feel that's what some of us really support the BBI thing. That are we able to reach a point where it's not about us versus them? And if you look at from the inception, what the Prime Minister and the President talked about when the issue of building bridges initiative came into being, they have maintained it that it's not about 2022. It's about our nation, and because they believe that Kenya is there, and Kenya will be there as many years as before even them in there. So what's so important is that I know there are so many cartels who, yeah, like you say, Murathe has been the guy speaking on behalf of Uhuru, and many others who might be speaking on behalf of Kalonzo and Mudavadi as well. Things are not going down with them when, you know, when they're still assuming that Uhuru is going for his first term 2013, not just knowing that it's only 2 years down the line and Uhuru will be exiting power. Not just presidency, but the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. And that's the reason why you see a lot of discussion is coming around, should Uhuru stay or should Uhuru not stay? But just like you said, the fundamental principle is that Uhuru, being who he is, he should not attempt to be in power again, because that will bring a very bad notion. And then again, you see, in Africa, do we really come to serve, or we are coming for personal interest? So sometimes personal interest might push, not Uhuru himself, even his group, for him to be pushed for another term as a president, not as a president, but in another chapter. And when you look at what you're saying about the casualties, I was very keen when Raila talked, even Uhuru talked. Ruto was so plain in terms of the BBI. Many people expected that after the document came from the people, we were just to develop a question, then now we go to referendum. But if you look at the talk is that we have received the first thing. We are bringing it back to you guys, then now you can add more. So in this issue of adding more, it's adding more from which quarter? That's what everybody is asking. So I see a situation where we are bringing another prime minister post. The discussion was, should it be executive or not executive? You know, the old BBI thing, if we forget about the national ethos, the corruption, those whistleblowers being given 5%, those are non-issues. The real issue is about the executive. And the better we talk about the executive, the better we save time. And I think the real issue in this country is about the executive. And it's not about Kenyans, it's about the political class, which has made it so much, so much emotive than it's supposed to be. So now they are taking us in another round of suckers that should we have executive prime minister or not executive prime minister. In a case where we are saying 5 is better than 2, will it reach a point where 10 is better than 5? So those are the discussions that we should be having.
All right, you've run away from this, but I'll still come back to you, but not before Doctor reacts to this. And Dr. Picking up from what the gentlemen have said and looking at the BBI, which I would want to believe you've gone through, yeah? And pretty much unfortunate that there are issues that are supposed to be discussed that are of interest to the common mwananchi in comparison to what he says, that the current talk is about the executive, the formation of government and all that. And we overlook the likes of the ethos that he brings on board. Do you suppose then, as a document, as it stands, it holds a capability of transforming the lives of Kenyans, yeah? The issues that Kenyans would want to be discussed? Do you suppose that it stands as a document that is indeed worth discussing and passing, for that matter?
It's a mixture of good and bad. Actually, if anything, I would have given concerns to the first two proposals. What actually you're throwing away, the ethos and the responsibilities of Kenyan citizens. If that was just implemented, then the rest of the other issues that we are discussing would have been sorted out. The rest of the other issues, to me, I call them a labyrinth meant to wear out our heads. Whatever BBI is initiated to render or to solve, Mike mentioned it to be a ceasefire, which is very interesting. And we've had several fires.
Several fires.
Some were explosives. In 207, actually 90, 92, 97. And then subsequently, we've always had commissions. And when Kenya was really serious for reform, that actually landed Kenya in 2010 constitutional referendum, that committee was led by Kriegler. And if you look at the 4 agenda that Kriegler report gave to Kenya to implement, which to date, Agenda 4 has never been done what? Touched to date. Look at even resettlement of IDPs and all those other ceasefires that were taking place. They did not take place. And this is why Kenyans rose again with eager to use their votes to speak in 2013. But unfortunately, that again was abused. You saw an electoral process that lacked transparency, lacked accountability, lacked accuracy. It was bungled, messed with, in servers which to date no one has ever accessed. These challenges are the issues that Kenyans need addressed. And Uhuru had an opportunity to do this. And I would, as a competitor, I would love to have him in the ring. Because that would be an easy sell. if he wants to come back for 2022.
It's always an easy sell when you're talking about manifestos that people are presenting, because then they always sound very beautiful and very nice to see, only to realize that they barely, sort of implement even a quarter of the manifestos that they sell.
That's the point. We Kenyan had time to judge Uhuru with their promises. And when the Jubilee government came to power, their irreducible minimums that they presented to Kenya, and some were to be done within 90 days. And today, look at what the newspapers are treating us with.
All right, speaking of which, the Jubilee Party seems not to be speaking in the same, sort of tone, in as much as they sort of are always out here to confirm that they are still united as a Jubilee Party. And I mean, when you look at such a scenario where there are differences, there could be democratic differences within a certain party, which is actually the ruling party, and that is okay. But these differences that are highly projected, what is left for the common mwananchi who is looking up to that ruling party to ensure that developmental activities are projected as expected across the country? Issues are addressed as expected across the country. What is left of us?
Linda, I don't know which Jubilee Party are you talking about?
The Tangatanga Kieleweke, the Jubilee Party that is ruling as it stands right now, the one that is led by President Uhuru Kenyatta.
In the true sense of the word, I doubt if Jubilee Party still exists.
Oh, really?
When was the last time any of its organs ever met?
That's another question.
A party has organs. By law, just look at the Constitution, look at the Political Parties Act. A party has organs.
They're planning elections. They're planning elections for next year. How can you rule them out?
We haven't reached that yet.
Oh, so there are likelihoods that
we've
things
had
will
such
change.
stories before.
Okay.
And so if they do it, we'll believe them. I even doubt if they will, because we've had these stories before. Already, I heard Murade saying that if whoever wants to lead the party should declare, because that will mean that that person wants to take on Uhuru Kenyatta. You see, that's another way of saying that even the so-called elections may be a sham in the long term. But I just want to say this. I don't think Kenyans will get much from the Jubilee government up to 2022, because the party itself does not even respect its own constitution. It does not even operate according to the wishes of the members. Who are the members? When do they ever meet? Where do they ever meet? When do they ever even give feedback to the leaders that this is what we promised to give Kenyans, and this is how far we've done, and this is what is remaining to be done? And how many years to elections? So I don't think Kenyans should expect anything more than what they are getting.
As we're saying that, because most of the times when we see governments failing, then there's that call for an uprising, that call for a revolution. As Kenyans, and acknowledging the fact that we might actually not be able to get so much so until 2022, until we get in a different government, which will likely probably have the very same monkeys on board. I mean, should we just again sit pretty and say, and pride in that and say it's okay, we're not going to get much and we're contented with that? Let's wait and see what the next government brings on board.
Two things. One, change comes to those who agitate for it. If Kenyans continue sitting pretty, they will always get what they bargained for. If Kenyans want real change, it is now time to start organizing for that change today. And we are a civilized society, and a civilized society operates based on law and order. Kenyans should start organizing along constitutionally agreeable channels to capture power in 2022 and bring real change. But sitting back and expecting manna from heaven, that's why you hear people saying some people are not going anywhere. Because they are sure that people will just sit back and wait, and they'll dictate. In a proper society, by now, the mwananchi should be so fed up that he should be out mobilizing on how to take power back to the mwananchi. This recycling of leaders reflects the kind of inertia that our society has. When the leaders realize that people are very laid back, then they stick there. But if people are very active and they are ready to tell, hey, my friend Paul or Justus, your time is up, go home. Even Paul and Justus will start thinking about how to exit. But if nobody tells them to go home, they'll say, oh, people must be very happy that we are around here. So we are going nowhere.
Or they might be very stupid to notice that we're actually around here. And of course, they'll enjoy that moment. Paul, as
Correct.
we wind up on this particular subject, coming back to the question of Raila now, being a staunch party member, would you suggest, or would you rather that he proceeds to be, of course, on the race?
To
come
Langata or
2022?
Bondo?
To Langata or Bondo. Let's be specific. Let's go, into details of that matter. And when we see the change of tone, sudden change of tone by Team Tanga Tanga in regards to how they have approached the BBI. An interesting move, and do you suppose then that would alter the political matrix that probably could have been set by the two, that is President Uhuru Kenyatta and, Right Honorable Raila Odinga?
Okay, what's there is Raila Odinga, just like you said, the 19 hours that Raila had with Uhuru, some of the things that they discuss have not come out to the public. They are still keeping them in their chest. But being Raila, whom I know, who I still see going to the gym every morning, I don't think he will be pretty sitting just to go for a Langata seat. That gym is going every morning is for moving across the country. So Raila Odinga will not go for less than presidency. So what we see in Tanga Tanga, Ruto is also is a street politician, and he has learned a lot, being that we had a referendum in 2005, which of course created us versus them, those who are supporting and those who are not supporting. Then we had the one for, we had 2013, the issue of ICC came. They created it like those who are for Uhuru and Ruto to be jailed in Hague, and those who were against. And then you remember, towards 2013, towards 2017, Raila tried to bring the issue of referendum, though the pressure was too, the relationship between Uhuru and Ruto was so intact that they could not allow that thing to penetrate in between them. So 2017 now it comes again. Ruto has learned the Raila type of politics, and true to their tune, they have said no. Even if you bring that Uhuru presidential term should be extended to 3, instead of 2 terms, it should be 3 terms. They will support. Meaning, what they are trying to avoid is one. Ruto was in Kibra by-election, and he saw what election is. If you want to put Ruto in an election now, referendum, that is going against it, meaning you will fund all of it. Then 1 year down the line also you are funding your presidential campaign again. It will not be financially cost effective for him. So he has said, let me forget about this issue of referendum. I'll support anything these people come up with. And then now I'll face them in the general election. If any case, their lineup is against my wish. So I think that's what they have discussed as a syndicate, and they have agreed that come what may, we will support the BBI the way it is come. And even here, like 2 days ago or 1 day ago, Murkomen was even saying that Uhuru want to be the Prime Minister of Ruto, Prime Minister of Ruto. The same thing, the other side. I don't know why people, like even when the BBI was being read in Bomas, I say part of the larger Nyanza, people are disappointed. I don't know what to put in their mind that Raila was going for Prime Minister post. So it's something that is there. There are other discussions also that maybe Uhuru and Raila might bring another neutral candidate. That's the reason why you see the Tanga Tanga group at once were hitting on Matiang'i. Then they realized not Matiang'i, they are now hitting on Munya. So the speculation continues. But what is so important is Jubilee government has failed in terms of implementing their manifesto, which was so much full of PR. You remember the stadium, you remember I remember even the deputy president saying that in every ward there will be internet. For bundles, there will be colleges in every ward.
You'll be surfing for free.
Surfing for free. And when you look at when he was counting those stadiums, the one for Meru, Kinoru, Water, and everything, it has failed. What we have today is that the rate of borrowing
Has gone high.
Has gone high more than the tax that we collect every year. So remember when Uhuru and Ruto came into power in 2013, our debt was at around 1.6 trillion. Within a span of 5 years, it has doubled from 1.6 trillion to 5.6 trillion.
Headed to 9.
It's headed to 9 now.
Something that, 1.6 trillion was the debt that we had 50 years down the line. These are only 5 years down the line. We have tripled the debt ratio. So it's upon us as a country to think about it, because 60% of our income we spend on food, and then 70% of Kenyans are farmers. Then the same government brought for us wrong seed, wrong fertilizers. Now there's no nini, there's no food. So there's food insecurity has risen also. So, and if you look at the discussion now we have, it's just about political discussions. We have never sat down as a nation and start discussing on how do we want to move with our nation in terms of prosperity, in terms of food security. You look at it, our institutions are releasing over 500,000 students every year into the market. There are no proper creativity in job creation. Where are we going as a nation? So those are the direction that some of us will feel. We feel that as BBI bring in the issue of governance, are we able also to, are we able also to inculcate on some of the issues about that concern the real mwananchi?
Okay, before I come to you, sometimes okay, well, let's first of all pick this phone call from John Adamba. Good morning, John.
Mama Linda.
Mambo. Boucher. Boucher. Semeni Boucher.
Boucher.
Yes, John, wacha tukusikie.
Na watu mkizungumzia mkitaja hapo BBI.
Yeah.
BBI, wacha niseme BBI. Kufikia leo hii tarehe 31 Disemba 2019.
Yeah.
Mimi sijaona mwelekeo wa BBI kwa sababu sijui tutaenda kwa referendum au tutaenda kwa njia ya bunge. Sasa hapo bado kuna mvutano mkubwa sana, na ninataka kusema namna hivi. Ile punguza mizigo mpaka sasa hivi wana bao moja. Bado mimi ninawapatia bao moja. Na BBI nawapatia 0, hawajafunga bao. Kwa sababu hatujui tutaelekea kwa njia ya referendum, hatujui tutaelekea kwa njia ya bunge. So hatujapata njia hapo bado. Kuna mvutano huku na pale, kule juu na chini, west, east, hatujapata hapo mwelekeo. Ndiposa nasema BBI 0, punguza mizigo, bado wanaongoza kwa bao moja. John Adamba, niko sehemu za Bungoma.
Asante sana, John. And you know, it might sound funny, but it's technically what the common mwananchi feels. You know, a majority of them have not even had a chance of getting a hold of the original document of the BBI. So you ask yourself, what are you conversing on?
And that surprised me when you said the doctor had read it.
I said I would want to assume that he has gone through it.
Because even the president has not taken it to parliament. You remember?
But you see, there's this document that is making rounds, so at least you're able to read for people.
So far, whatever they published on their website, there was a comprehensive,
yes,
and there was a elaborate, around 132, 134 pages.
Pages,
correct.
Yes. So that is exactly what, of course, you know, you'd say that it should be in line with that.
Yes.
And a couple of them have been circulating, which again gets the common mwananchi a little bit confused. And I would want to agree with that.
To me, I would agree with John.
Yes.
Because if this was done for posterity, then yes, I would support any time, even early in the morning. But Kenya, we are not having shortfall of rules or the laws. The shortfall we're having is genuine, honest leadership.
Which again, Doctor, actually that was my question, as in our misfortunes have highly been attributed to poor leadership. Right. In your own particular, of course, line, you are interested so much so on the leadership of the country. And I keep asking myself, I would want to ask any other leader who shows interest that, you know, they would want to come on board and make changes. What are the ultimate changes that would come on board? Because many a times we've said that we can have people who can come and transform, and instead of them transforming, they actually swallowed in the mess. So what are some of the changes that you suppose would have been made, even with the current laws that we have on the land?
Thank you so much, because that's the question I was waiting for. I had already mentioned that, you know,
want to be with the president
simple mind discuss individuals, and wise people discuss issues. And when you are narrowed to discussing who is running in 2022, me, I would not mind. I'd ask them to all come in the ring and we face each other.
Yeah.
And the revolution that you are talking about, actually revolution is not just throwing stones. and burning tires in the street. Revolution always begins in the renewal and transformation of the mind of the individuals. And that is what is urgently needed right now. The truth that can inform Kenyan citizens on the alternative leadership we are talking about.
Right.
And of course, the sincerity of these individuals, who judge a tree by the fruit that it bears. We've given Jubilee time to serve us. And then our senior hero from Nyanza, we will also tell him that change is spontaneous. Change is not static. As Charles Rubia is lying to rest, may he rest in, his soul rest in peace. We heroize them. Those who fought to kick away the white man, it was a serious fight. You're fighting with machetes against the gun, and they won. Those are our heroes. Those who champion multi-party democracy, to a point that we can sit here and you can see Mike is so relaxed. He knows no one is waiting for him at the gate. Because somebody fought for liberation, democratic liberation, and they defeated one party, dictatorial regime. And then we give it to them. But are they relevant today? If you allow them to implement or to represent you today, would they be in sync? Because the global society is not also static, waiting for us. And then the second liberation, where even our ODM party leader participated immensely. They've done very well, and we can't take that away from them. And that's why we are discussing them today. But when we are talking about the reality in this generation and the change that is happening globally, what are the discussions that are happening in the global community? Look at Brexit. They voted in what? Protectionism, isn't it? Look at US. What are they talking about? Look at communism in the East. Now, if we were to match up, and that is what should drive the leaders, if we were to match up with the global community, our education should not just be Kenyanized, but we should produce the global citizen, isn't it? Who can be employed all over. Not a curriculum which, if you go to states, you have to be reduced some grades down for you to catch up. That is not what this generation are looking for. And if you're talking about job creation, some of these individuals, actually, they don't even see, when you tell them you're broke, they don't understand, because one is born in wealth, and their families have monopolized even businesses. Which government does business? If you are the same government, you're capturing also economy, of what posterity is your interest? And these are the things that are having far-reaching effect to the youths of today and the citizens. Actually, these are the majority voters. So if somebody sit back and boast and say, you know what, I can change the constitution and come back and you'll still elect me, it is over their own dream. Those are the guys who have lost touch with the reality. They don't know the resolve that Kenyans have. Those who have graduated from university and have tarmacked in this Nairobi until they don't have shoe to tarmac anymore, have gone home watching and looking at their fathers and their families whose wealth they depleted and they can't replace. Don't think those people are sitting back pretty. If you ask them for revolution, those guys can do whatever they're ready to do. All they're waiting for is a direction. Right. Kenyans have suffered. The people whose businesses are being closed because of high tax rate, where people are borrowing money and it's landed up in their pockets, is not doing anything to jumpstart the economy. And then the businesses that are closing down, marriages that are failing because of those ones. Kenyans have had it. All that is keeping us and holding us together is hope. And I would not want to add salt to injury. I would want to add them more hope and tell them, yes, irrespective of how much we've gone through. Because Kenya, if it is not our enormous wealth that we have, Kenyan economy would have fallen kitambo. These guys have stolen too much. And here we are still running, isn't it? Right. And then look at the health, the mismanagement in the health sector. You've seen how cancers ravaged families. You've seen how some treatable diseases are killing people. And here we are, we're still surviving. Look at the flood. Kenyans are maneuvering. What is the government doing? If not hand to mouth. If we were to have long-term solution to handle and address Kenyan issues, then we will need to talk about a different leadership, not the current leadership that are using people in a condescending manner for their own political game. People who have chances. Imagine 10 years. Ruto in the office as a deputy president, 10 years with,
The very
with,
same
with
one.
Uhuru in the office as a president. And the same guys come back and tell you, now add me 10 years. And if you look at what he did with the 10 years, he should be shot if there are other countries.
But what
and
then
be
is the
sent
role
to
of the
jail.
electorate is what we keep asking
No,
ourselves.
that is
because
why we
if
need the truth to set us free.
All right, we have like 2 minutes before
Yeah,
we
2
go
minutes.
for a break.
I just want to talk
Right.
from...
1 minute, 1 minute.
yeah.
We're coming back, not to worry.
Paul will have more than 1 minute. I'll only take less. I want to talk about the policy perspective regarding the high debt levels. It was mentioned in passing. We are now approaching 9 trillion. Now, this is a very serious matter because high debt levels mean that we are heading towards higher taxation to service these debts.
Yes, yeah.
And remember, we no longer have industries. Our industries collapsed. Mumias went, Moroni went, Chemelil went, Pan Pepper went, Ramisi went, Kikomi went, Rivertex went. All over the country, industries went. When industries went, that means unemployment rose. Now, when there is heavy unemployment, lack of industries, high taxation, you end up with only one result. It is called servitude. So from a policy perspective, high debt levels are calculated to make sure that the society remains in perpetual servitude. Paul, I've taken just 30 seconds.
I will not allow
You can
Paul
take
to
that.
come in until you make the common Mwananchi understand what then you mean by high servitude, and then we cross over for a break, and then we'll come back to you so that at least you get ample time as opposed to pushing you.
Okay, when you...
In just about 1 minute.
High servitude means you are now reduced to a slave because everything, you lack what to eat, you lack medicine, you lack decent water, you lack decent shelter, you are surviving like in the state of nature. Then controlling you becomes easy. That's now because those who have, just like Dr. Juma has said, there are people who have monopolized the means of production and the modes of production. Now at the top there and below them, then there are the serfs and the slaves whom they can now control at will. Then they will come to the village with 50 bob, 50 bob, 50 bob, and you do as they wish. That is the net effect of this kind of economic arrangement.
Pretty much unfortunate because most of the Kenyans will tell you if we're not there, then certainly we are headed there. So we are taking a short breather and we're coming back to just remind ourselves of the bad times, because sometimes it's good to remind yourselves of the bad times that you know you went through, and then out of that, then you know moving forward, this is how I've picked a lesson from it, and moving forward, this is how I'm going to address it in the event that it comes out. Of course, we'll be taking a look at the trends in 2019, the tragedies, of course, the cost of living, how it has, of course, skyrocketed, and equally the violence that is within the home setup. All, again, sadly, attributed to poor leadership. After this break. Yes, and before we proceed to the next subject of discussion, let's first of all allow Paul to weigh in his sentiments. And my question was then, what is left of the electorate, who again has the ultimate right to decide whether they're going to put this leader on board or not, in as much as there's always that talk of systems and, you know, sometimes some of these people rig their way in and all that. At least at some point in time, the electorate should have their voices heard.
I think that the reason why, if you look at the 9-point agenda, the discussion is about electoral justice. And some of these things we're talking about, the deep state, I heard the former Vice President, Kalonzo Musyoka, talking about the deep state. That's why we have to reach a point where are we able to get the right result, free, fair, credible, verifiable election come 2022, because that has been the main issue in every electioneering period. And that's the reason some of us really champion that. Apart from all the other shenanigans, are we able to have a impartial electoral system? Kenyans, it's not the first time. The deep state was defeated in 2002 when their candidate was Uhuru Kenyatta, and it was against the will of the people. People stood firm and voted for Moi Kibaki. The point where we have reached as Kenyans is just about believing in what is right, stopping being so much resilient, and then be in the street and champion for the rights of all of us. Because as things goes, I pray, because without a handshake, this country could have collapsed. Imagining the economic crisis that we have now and then the political temperature being high, we could not be having a nation today. So it's high time now we as Kenyans stand up and champion for what's right for all of us. And looking at what he was just saying here, there's some of this economic problem that we have just allowed ourselves. If you go to here in Kajiado, you find a well built, constructed or with a less than 2 million shillings and serving around 100 households. You find in Aurora and Kimorer, they had put 63 billion for a region which is less populated, less than 2 million people. 63 billion in Kajiado, a well-constructed 2 million serving over 100 people. So 63 billion, if they just decided now to put wells, how much, if you look at the cost effective and everything. So we are living in a country where we are not resource conservative concerned in such a way that Kenyans are dying because of poverty. And just like you put it, the leadership and governance, that's what helps this country. And constitution without constitutionalism is not a constitution. Yes.
All right. Well, sort of a note to or a point to note, but then you say that the political temperatures sort of cooled down after the handshake. Sort of cooled down, I think, would be the word, because then we still have the political temperatures running across the country pretty much high. Why I'm saying this is because for the longest of time, there have been those calls to Kenyan leaders, most of the leaders, of course, within the Jubilee Party, ODM, and all these other parties, to sort of just try and put aside 2022 talk or 2022 politics talk and concentrate on the question of development. While we all agree that politicians are paid to politic, I think this has gone to a level that probably has been, sort of pollutant in a way for the people of Kenya. Maybe that's the reason why we've not had things moving on pretty well as expected. And so there's been that battle on who's going to succeed President Uhuru Kenyatta, the talks on over referendum, and year in, year out, 2019 has been characterized by matters of politics. But amid all this politics or politicking, we have not failed to have our fair share of tough times as a people of Kenya. That's the reason why today we're having this conversation. And even the biggest reason why most of the Kenyans will tell you they fear for tomorrow. They do not know what tomorrow holds for them, but then they still hold on to hope, what doctor says. So we take a look at some of the tough times, because it's on these that you review and sit down on ground and say that moving forward, I think this is the direction. I mean, with the good times that you can always celebrate and celebrate the victory, put it aside, focus on addressing the issue. So let's take a look at some of the tragedies that sort of met us as a people of Kenya in 2019. And we'll look at how far we are in regards to addressing such in the event that they get to occur again. We're not trying to prophesy doom, but you never know. Anything will always happen. I mean, things are bound to happen. So how ready you are is what will determine how safe you will be. Let's take a look at that.
Incident. After investigations as to why the 10-year-old building collapsed, preliminary reports revealed that the structure was built on a swampy area. Diana Rachel Mbogwa, Ibru TV.
Quite a lengthy one, but equally snippets of what played out in terms of the misfortunes, social misfortunes that we witnessed in the country. And some of them would say that, are more or less like a recap. Some things that have happened before, especially when we're talking about drought and floods. And we keep asking ourselves, have we not set enough policies to address these issues? I mean, as a country, as a government. So to the policy experts, when we come to the question of policy, and up until today, we're talking about how much so our people are losing their lives because of floods, because of drought, because of course, terror attacks. At least we can say with terror, it's a global fight that is still ongoing. It's been tied even for the United States, the like of the bigger brothers. So you can only say that on this one, we have to go a little bit slow, because like they will always say, the terrorists are always a step ahead or 2 steps ahead in comparison, of course, to the fights that we put up. But when we take a look at all these issues that have been captured there and the others that we've not even touched on, do you suppose then that we have set up proper policies or we've not? And in the event that we have, do we implement them at all?
Thank you, Linda. Let me just, from what I have watched here, I'll break them down into 5 categories. Category number 1 is on terrorism. Terrorism is a global problem, and it affects nearly every country. But for Al-Shabaab in Kenya, it's a bit interesting, because we cannot claim that Al-Shabaab has certain motives to staged terrorist attacks in Kenya because of certain issues in Somalia. Remember, the KDF moved into Somalia after Al-Shabaab had abducted a French woman at the coast.
On the coast, yeah.
So the KDF moved into Somalia as a response to what Al-Shabaab did. So there has been this argument that has been put forward by policy analysts that Al-Shabaab wanted actually to create a caliphate around here. And that is what attracted world attention, that Al-Shabaab must be fought by all means. That is category number one. Category number two is about aviation accidents. Aviation accidents are also global. They happen rarely. They happen very rarely. But the reason why they get to the headline is because poor people don't board planes. It is the rich who do so. That is why when a plane goes down, you get it in the headline because you know who is involved. So those ones can be taken care of. The third category is about the lady who sank in the ferry with her car and her daughter. It was amazing that this country does not even have divers in our ferries, and yet those ferries are there. I've used the ferry many times, and I never knew that we don't even have divers on board. And yet we are moving across the ocean. That's terrible for a country like this that has a lot of money. Training and equipping divers on those ferries should be done as early as possible. The fourth category is about floods and droughts. These are natural phenomena, but the problem is we have them every year until we have like assumed that it is normal for floods to come and sweep everybody in Nyando into Lake Victoria. And then they sweep everybody in Budalangi into Lake Victoria. And then we will have towards the coast also. This country has never taken these natural calamities seriously. And it's terrible because we cannot claim to be a civilized country when we do not take care of the vulnerable sections of the population, wherever they live, how they live, what happens, should there be rain, should there be lack of rain, or things like that. That is a policy issue, kabisa. The country has fallen short of developing proper policies to deal with that. The last category that I want to deal with is collapsed houses or collapsing buildings. That is a direct result of corruption. Because building houses or building settlements is supposed to be supervised by government agencies. And particularly in towns and cities where the government has a very powerful presence, you should not be able to build a house unless you've been cleared, you've got all the permits, it's been supervised, and everything is in order. So we all know the part that corruption plays in for instance, even in City Hall here. So people get building plans approved, and everybody knows riparian land, and sometimes we see even substandard building materials are used, and still certificate of occupation is given. A friend of mine was telling me a story in Syokimau here. The developer developed an estate. He did not develop a sewage system in that estate. Somehow he managed to get the completion certificate, which enabled him to sell the houses. When he sold the houses, he took off with the money.
And now the person who's been sold to.
There are many people.
Oh, no.
Then the county government of Machakos now comes and says, we are going to close this estate now. And people have bought. The developer has gone. So it becomes another issue altogether. Because now you have only bought one house. There are 100 houses. You cannot now construct the sewage system for a single house, because you know a sewage system is a network that is supposed to cover everybody else. But that tells you about the kind of corruption even in our county governments. And that needs to be dealt with. It is not a small matter. We cannot say that collapsed buildings are natural phenomena or are the hands of God. The hand of God is, I think, does not do such crazy things. We need to deal with these things as a matter of governance.
Yeah.
From a policy perspective, these are governance issues that need to be dealt with and to be addressed immediately.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Justus, walking into 2020 and, you know, with the stories that we've just captured or the stories that we've just recapped on, Mike brings on board pertinent points, and he says that yes, in a way, there are some of them that we've also dealt with. And for instance, we cannot equally go, you know, just pinpointing and saying that, you know, we've not done enough. When you look at the ferry issue, you know, it's just brought to light lots of things that we had not done right. And in a way, then there was another occurrence that, of course, again, the ferry board came on board to address it, you know, in a proper way, you know, speedy. In comparison to what played out earlier on. So when you look at such occurrences, do you suppose that how we've dealt with them as a country was probably good enough, not forgetting the D2 and, you know, the attacks, the terror attacks that are staged in the country and all that, the mudslides, the landslides and the floods. In how we've dealt it, have we tried our level best, or is there a way that we can, you know, go an extra mile towards ensuring that this is possible? And when we're talking about is there a way, then it has to be something that is easily realizable.
Well, I give it to Kenyans. Our resilience, looking at the things we go through. You're sleeping in your house and you're just swept and you're gone.
I know.
Sitting in your car and you're
Some
falling
people
deep,
using boats
256
across the city, you know, like just within the village you're using boats. It's interesting.
Yes. She's found 256 feet down below the sea and no one can even get you.
I know.
Yet you are just boarding the ferry like any other person. And the things Kenyans go through, to me, I narrow it down to us being very great people. Our resolve, we are not easily finishable. And we cannot afford to allow politicians to finish us or poor leadership to finish us. I'm very hopeful that we're going to surmount this. And we need a leader who can fit into that spirit and also stand in the gap. Actually reminds me of Moses of the Bible. At a certain point, the Israelites were so wicked to a point that he decided, you know what, Moses, go down to your people to finish all of them. It was very easy to tell, you know, the Almighty that these are not my people. You're the one who began the gymnastic when I was shepherding my sheep in the desert, and you started burning bushes. It was very easy for him to, you know, disassociate himself from them.
Right.
But what did he do? He knew what would preserve the people and giving the people a second chance. So even the corrupt ones that we've had, yes, they are our own. The only mistake we cannot do is allowing them in the office
Again.
to repeat those mistakes. Because he says, it's only a fool who does the same thing, the same way, expecting a different result.
results.
We need a leader who can stand in the gap and resonate with the spirit of Kenyans. Look at the Hionis of 159. Look at the heroes, the things that we go through. How resilient are we withstand? Even the famine. You know, some people, these guys who are messing up with us, give them even 1 second or a day without food. And Kenyans out there can tie their belly and hold, hoping for the best. And based on that spirit, I would pray together with them. And I would encourage Kenyans that irrespective of how difficult it has been, yes, the flood came, wiped some of us, but we are still standing to move on their spirits.
Right.
The buildings fall on some when they are sleeping. And here we are, we should still continue representing them and carrying forward with their spirits. And you've seen several things that are happening to Kenyans. All we need are leaders who can resonate with that spirit and carry the Kenyan spirit forward.
All right.
And all these strategies, tragedies we're talking about, be it through corruption, I think these things will be a thing in the past.
In the past. Well, Adede Paul Adede, while we say that we might, stand strong and, soldier on, for how long is the question. My next clip would have been in line with the cost of living and the fact that lots of industries have closed down, and we are now, in as much as we are always talking about addressing the question of unemployment, it's clear that we are headed to that level whereby it's going to be on the rise based on the fact that we've seen notable, of course, industries going down. So when we take a look at the cost of living as a people of Kenya, when we take a look at how bad the economy is sort of managing, I mean, as we march into 2022, in our very own special capacity as a people, what move can we take towards salvaging the situation? Because enough is at a point when we're going to be pointing fingers. I don't know who is this leader who said that, you can always be pointing fingers at the very same politicians, forgetting that they're the very same people who've landed you in the same trouble. So if they landed you there, it's because they wanted you there. So it's incumbent upon you as a people to take up the mantle and say that moving forward, forget about the leadership, this is how we're going to go towards addressing this.
Moving forward, in terms of the economic crisis that we have today, it's there's 1 trillion that we should be paying, I think by January. That's the next hours to the China government. Moving forward, the monetary policy and the fiscal policy has been disabused by the current government. And it's high time now the government sit down with the economic experts and then we restructure some of these loans that we have. Because if we move the way we are moving, we are not going to have a nation. And that's the reason why it's very important. Because what we collect today, the Kenya Revenue Authority collect, and the debts that we have, we are not, the gap is so huge that we cannot cope with it. As you just said, some of these issues like the terror risk, you find that some of those people are just Kenyans who have gone through economic
tough times, have been radicalized.
Have been radicalized, and now they are willing to do anything for them to have money. So those are some of the issues that we need to, as a nation, to discuss. Have we reached at that point that killing somebody is economic benefit to you? And then the issue of ferry. I've been in Tanzania. If you look at the way, and I was in Mombasa just like 3 weeks ago, and I used that ferry. In Tanzania, when you board the ferry with your vehicle, everybody alight. You go to the other upstairs, you stay there. When you dock the other side, the people first move out, you go back to your vehicles, and then but in Kenya, people comfortably sit in their vehicles. And that's a strategy that can be sorted out in terms of even making sure that everybody move out of their vehicles when they're in water. And again, in terms of housing, Raila always call them structures. They're not houses. If you look at Kibra, those are not houses, those are structures. So the housing project could have really benefited some and sorted out this issue of houses collapsing. And you have never had a house collapsing in Karen, Runda, or where. They're just within the slum areas. So it's high time now the proper planning be done in our cities. It's not about Nairobi alone, it's even other areas, though the media has not captured it all. So it's high time now even those areas also be captured. And then the policy experts, the government should sit down and have proper planning in terms of where they're taking this nation in terms of debts. The debts have really increased. The food insecurity has risen. Droughts, imagine today people are dying because of floods. In the next 2 months, there will be drought all over. And then you ask, what are some of the disaster management and tragedy management that are we put down as a nation? So it's high time now also we look at it, they come up with a good policy on how we can do some of these things. Yes.
All right, thank you so much, gentlemen. And on that very note, we're going to wind up. I think it's only fair in 30 seconds to be precise. I allow you people to send that message of hope at least. I mean, above everything, we need to have that hope to the people of Kenya as we wind up.
Thank you, Linda. I would like to wish Kenyans a very happy and prosperous 2020. The situation may look very gloomy as we are speaking now, but there is always hope. There is always hope for the better. That's why we are alive. We hope that the noise we make here, the leaders of this country listen, because we may not be speaking on behalf of ourselves, because we are part of the wider society. We also talk to people. We belong to families. We have friends, and we talk with them. And they say, Mike, if you go on set, please say these things, because we don't have a platform where we can say these things. So some of the views we give here, they may sound very radical, and they may sound like they are our own, but they're not. Actually, it's a broad view that you find out when you go out even to buy your newspaper, or you go for your shoe polish.
Are you looking at whether mine is polished? Okay, yes. It's white in color.
Just bring a conversation.
Yeah.
You will hear the same things that we discuss here. Those are the feelings of Kenyans. And if the leaders of this country are serious, they should really listen to what people are saying here, and they should salvage this country before it goes down the drain. Some of the best countries that we knew about went down. By the way, when we were growing up, we knew Ivory Coast was the most stable country.
I know. That's what we keep saying. We're not special in any way.
In Africa. And right in our lifetime, right before our eyes, we saw Ivory Coast descend into the biggest civil war we've ever seen in Africa here. And it took a long time. Up to date, they're still negotiating, because they took things for granted. The political leaders took people for granted. And the society just exploded or imploded.
Is it fair to say that your time has been chewed by him?
No.
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
30 seconds, I guess.
Thank you.
I wish Kenyans a happy new year. We are a special nation. We have always come together in terms of crisis, and we hope 2020 will be a great year for all of us. Let's support the Building Bridges initiative and see how far it can take as a nation. If it will bring as a panacea to the political problem and economic problem, I urge all Kenyans that we support it and see how far it can take us.
Thank you. Doc, 30 seconds.
Somebody says when you add value to people, you lift them up and you help them advance and make them a part of something bigger than themselves. And assist them in advancing, assist them in becoming who they were made to be. Often, those are the leaders who add value and change lives, and that's who we should be. Adding value to one another, changing each other's life, and as we are crossing over, may our focus not be on the trials that challenge us, but may they be stepping stone to the greatness that we are going to be, the extraordinary Kenya that we are all longing and dreaming for. I'm so sure this year is going to be better. Happy New Year.
To that. Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Justice Juma, Adede Paul Adede, and of course, Michael Leo seated right next to me. And up until, of course, tomorrow, we have to say goodbye. Thank you so much, for your time. And we as the media will always be here to ensure that we offer that platform, of course, to us preaching the gospel of change. Up until tomorrow, see you.